Huh. I just realized now that I feel very relaxed. And that actually isn't frequent. That's not really a common thing. Honestly, when I'm going on these longer car rides, I get really anxious. And I don't know why, but I think it's just being enclosed in a car by myself. Doesn't matter if I'm playing music or listening to a podcast. Just get like very on edge when I'm in longer car rides. I don't know why, but that really helped me. Like this is the first car ride in a while where the whole time I like felt okay. Wow. That's kind of a breakthrough. Weird. I feel very human right now. Okay, well, thanks, Mac.
I really was not expecting this album to affect me as much as it did. I mean, during my initial reaction, each song hit me in the usual tabby way.
Whoa! This is the one, man. Oh my god! Whoa. I love this shit, dude. Oh my god.
But, like you saw in the first clip, nothing really set in until after swimming's close. Even more so after I stopped recording. It had me asking one simple question. What the hell just happened? Now, I know I present myself almost caricature-like, full of energy and absolutely loving everything I hear. Go watch the revival video. What you see is a heightened version of myself, but it is still very much me. Just the side I allow you to see. In real life, I am riddled with insecurities, anxiety, hypochondria, infrequent insomnia, depression, poor prioritization over social, financial, educational, and occupational habits. To boil it all down, I am human. And as cliche as that sounds, I have come to realize that it is the most important thing to remember when experiencing mental health issues, be it personally or for those in your life who suffer from the same. I believe Mac made a similar discovery, one that, among other things, drove him to create this album. Where his previous work felt juvenile, trippy, and observational, this latest release illustrates the beauty of being flawed and the journey toward forgiveness and self-love. For the first time in his career, he didn't create something for anyone else but himself. And because of that, Swimming is Mac Miller's best album. Now, it has taken me a while to sit down, write, and edit the remainder of this video. My mental health has kind of been reflecting the status of how my life currently feels. That is, being at a standstill. The endeavors I'm pursuing seem so close to full realization, but combining ambition with patience has always been difficult for me because I get impulsive with new ideas. Though not initially negative, it becomes so when I put previous ideas on pause. I freeze up, I give in to my anxieties. I let them win. Although my control over these moments has only gotten stronger with experiencing them, they still occur. Time is the ultimate healer, yes, but taking initiative to do all you can do to aid time is what I am still learning to do. This is what swimming helped me realize, providing the ultimate metaphor that I never knew I needed to hear. Life feels like this vast ocean that I'm stuck floating in the middle of. I feel small. There's no sign of shore or other boats. It's terrifying. That fear of scale and the unknown keeps me frozen. Then waves of anxiety toss me around and nearly drown me in my own thoughts and insecurities. The only real way to help yourself is, well, to start swimming. But what if I can't swim? What if I'm bad at it? I can only do that. Where would I even go? I don't know where I am. Guess what? You're never going to know anything until you start. The waves will always come, you're still small compared to an ocean, but the important thing is that when you start, you are finally moving forward. As long as you keep swimming, you cannot drown, you will find land, you will be rescued, you will make it. Waiting in the water, arguing with yourself about what could and couldn't be only keeps you stuck in the same place. Mobility is the only solution to immobility. Just pick a direction and go. If there is any light to be shed on his unfortunate passing, it's that he left the world with this gift to those going through fear of self. He never felt like a celebrity or some unapproachable icon.
I'm gonna say what's up to everyone here individually.
Everyone, the industry, the fans, his closest friends and family, everyone was heavily affected by his death and still is. I and many others were strangers to him outside of his music, but such an overwhelming amount of us experienced the feeling of losing a close friend. And that loss, though tragic, reveals just how strong of an impact he had on so many. It's really beautiful. So, before going further into this video essay, I just want to say thank you, Malcolm McCormick, for never being anything other than yourself. Always smiling, always passionate to create, and giving people like me hope. That being said, I kinda hated Mac Miller at first. Blue Slide Park was my first foray into his music, and yeah, I was not a day one fan. But this was a time when I attended Warped Tour and straightened my hair every day.
It takes me about 25 minutes to do my hair.
So, surprise, surprise, I really didn't have any musical credibility. Then watching movies came out, which I listened to, ironically, because, I had to maintain my cool guy vibe. But the more I listened to that album, the more I started to actually, listen. It was a big change for him. Basically, the sound equivalent of moving out of a frat house into his own apartment. I mean, his early material wouldn't have been labeled as frat rap if the stereotypes of that lifestyle weren't evident through his lyrics or persona. Getting more metaphorical, think about how big a frat house actually is. Multiple rooms, levels, hallways, and it goes beyond just physical largeness. A sizable social life is also part of the package, with frequent parties and roommates mere feet away at all times. Moving into your own space after that consistent stimulation would be difficult for anybody, and that came through in Mac's music. From Macadelic to Faces, his discography became more and more claustrophobic, yet telling. It was like if Mac was living inside of a fogged-up glass box, and with each release, he would wipe the dew away just a little more until we got a clearer view of his livelihood. And we saw that Mac was experimenting with more than just his sound. Substances became a tool for his artistic choices and, unfortunately, coping methods. And yes, this often is a side effect of fame, especially at younger ages, but going back to the metaphor of frat house to studio apartment, Mac never had to truly face himself until that point. Outside of drugs and music, there was no form of escape anymore. Thankfully, 2015 marked a turning point in Mac's well-being with his third studio album, Good AM. In it, he detailed his lowest points spanning those 2 years prior and assured fans new and old that he was going to be okay. This was also his first record through Warner Brothers, who I assumed helped guide Mac down to a safer path as well. It was his wake-up call, hence the album's name. Divine Feminine followed, shedding light on Mac's sensitive side and his views of romantic, spiritual, and sensual love. It is easy to credit these newer observations to Ariana Grande, but to me, that is pretty ignorant and discredits any artistic integrity Mac possesses. He even ended Divine Feminine with audio of his grandmother detailing how she met and married the love of her life. If anything, the project is an ode to all aspects of love. I also just want to say, please leave Ariana Grande alone. If anyone is going through a serious amount of pain over Mac Miller, it is her. She is not at fault, and stop attaching Mac Miller's entire identity to her. It wasn't fair to him when he was alive, and it certainly isn't now. And it's not fair to Ariana. They are two individual artists, two individual human beings with two individual souls. Stop using their status as an excuse to dictate how they feel.
The need to show people I was okay. Like, what is that? Where does that come from? It's not that unique, Like, I was in love with somebody. We were together for 2 years. Mm-hmm. We worked through good times, bad times, stress, and everything else. And then it came to an end, and we both moved on.
Sorry, that has been bothering me for a while now. Anyways, what really matters is that through Good AM and Divine Feminine, Mac was finally allowing positivity back into his life organically. It was his way of telling his audience,
good,
hey,
solid.
But not in a passive way. He was being honest. But it wasn't until Swimming where he was finally honest with himself. This is a trait that is hard not to come by. Now, I'm not trying to speak for everyone, but in my experience, meeting people with anxiety, depression, etc., and opening a dialogue about our own struggles, in almost every instance we discover that others always come before us.
First reaction is to think about the well-being of others, which is kind of crazy when you should be actually just concentrating on yourself to some degree, but I understand.
But you just realize you have time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like there will be a time to address those things, but everything is, be fine.
It's the sole consequence of being selfless, especially when being selfish has such a negative connotation. The extremes of both sides are equally toxic, one externally and the other internally. Extremely selfish people socially alienate themselves, while extremely selfless people are so socially involved that they alienate themselves from themselves. It's kind of nuts to think about. There's balance between knowing when to put yourself first and who deserves your energy. Because if you put all of your energy into others, the tank is empty for the times when you need it the most. And of course you're not going to ask others for help. You're too selfless for that. You just burden others with your problems. They shouldn't have to put time into you, blah, blah, blah. I think this way all the time, and it makes me, accidentally, a hypocrite. I'm someone who drops anything when people I care about are going through some shit, but when I get the same energy in return, I push it away or I straight up don't even seek it out. That blows my mind. And I know I'm not the only one who does that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're all a little fucked up. And in returning to the point of this video, life is an ocean, and you have the choice to float in it, drown, or swim. Waves are natural. The scale will never change, but you will move forward. Put in the energy, progress, persevere. Mac Miller found that balance between selflessness and selfishness with the release of the album in question. Good AM was his selfless record, made for the people so we knew he was in a better place, whereas Swimming was his selfish record, made for Malcolm McCormick so he'd know he was okay. Both are the healthy and balanced version of each side. That's why Swimming resonates so strongly with people, because being such a personal record, it's easy to step into Mac's shoes, or better yet, and view life from his perspective. He created this album to find peace of mind with his own failures, struggles, addictions, etc., and instead of wallowing in them, he chose to move forward. He chose to swim. Before making that resolution, his most evident recognition of this metaphor happens on the song
Perfecto!
Mac is literally treading water here, saying, "It ain't perfect, but I don't mind because it's worth it," with the ad-libs immediately questioning, is it? The juxtaposition of a carefree delivery of exceptionally dark lyrics on a goofy beat is intriguing and perfectly puts a cynical spin on his dismissal of self-care, ironically the title of the song that follows. Perfecto closes with what I view as the darkest portion of Swimming as a whole. Many think these lyrics are centered around Ariana, but I would argue that this is more or less a reveal of the only self-care Mac knew. Looking at the song Objects in the Mirror, Mac was no stranger to personifying drugs as a woman.
You love me, spin me around. Pretty please pick me up in the air and don't put me down.
This is easy to dissect. Being up in the air or getting high makes him feel good.
Seen it all unfold, sat back and watched. Knowing time don't give a fuck about clocks until they stop.
Here, Mac is addressing his listeners that knew of and saw the direct results of his addiction, yet only cared about him superficially. The second line is a callback to a previous line in the song. When living off of borrowed time, often I'm on the fence, on a line, adding up what's on my mind. Being hesitant or constantly stuck in your head, playing the what ifs wastes the little time you have without even realizing it until the clock stops and it's too late. Now, the line also eerily alludes to his passing and the flood of love and admiration he and Swimming received after he was gone. Often, with celebrity deaths, a majority doesn't seem to care until it happens. I would like to think it was different for Mac, and I truly believe it was, but unfortunately there are still those who use tragedy in a toxically selfish way.
Bare feet, running late. Her car started even though the only thing that she driving a hard bargain.
See, this has now become one of the darkest points in the album for me. It represents Mac's helplessness when it came to addiction, using the driving pun as a means to explain temptation, and with the hard bargain being the risk of taking drugs. Bare Feet is not only a nod to the album cover, but how he was traveling through life. You can see that on the album cover too, that despite being cleaned up in a full suit, his feet are dirty and worn. He's been on this path for so long, running late. And how do we describe people who died too soon? Drugs provided a vehicle to get him there faster, and he was questioning whether or not to take the ride or keep a normal pace.
More important is I'm kind of sort of out the door, but she put me back together when I'm out of order. Perfect.
To me, Mac being almost out the door means he had never been closer to sobriety, finally leaving drugs behind. But addiction manipulated him into thinking that that desire was wrong or out of order and brought him right back inside. Replays of the song makes Mac sound almost brainwashed, convinced that doing drugs is a perfect way of taking care of himself when knowing internally that he couldn't be more wrong.
You ever feel like invincible? I lived a certain life for 10 years and faced almost no real consequence at all. I had no version of the story that didn't end up with me being fine. And you get the urge and the itch to tell people, don't worry, I'm okay. Don't worry, I'm okay. Because, you know, like I have people that care about me and fans that love my music, and it's a beautiful relationship with them. And then they see something like that and they worry. So your first reaction is, let me tell them I'm cool.
Now, I believe Mac wrote this to address the time in his life well before Swimming, a time where he really didn't know what his fate would be. I do not think he was suicidal, especially with how big of a revelation releasing this album was for him and how excited he was to tour. But this is why looking into his lyrics has been a difficult process for me as of late. This is Mac Miller's most therapeutic body of work, putting his demons on full display by recognizing and confronting them. Each track reflects both sides of the coin and acts as the foundation Swimming was built on. I keep reiterating this, but Mac really did make this album for himself, because there is true revelation through forgiveness of self. There is no better song to illustrate this than 2009. Opening with an angelic arrangement, 2009 is a pensive reflection of Mac's career. It was a time before his breakout year, with 2010 seeing his most iconic singles and the release of Kids. 2009 was a simpler time for him. Before fame, before addiction. He illustrates this turning point with the lines,
Sometimes I wish I took a simpler route. Instead of having demons that's as big as my house.
Although there is much less to dissect with 2009 than the likes of Perfecto, this is arguably the most important song on the album. Mac puts it simply.
You gotta jump in to swim. Yeah. The light was dim in this life of sin. Now every day I wake up and breathe. Yeah. I don't have it all, but that's alright with me.
You can't make any progress if you don't confront demons and move forward. Being afraid to deal with your problems is like having a fear of deep water, staring at your reflection right before you jump in, dreading what could lie underneath, the depth, the cold, any excuse your mind makes to protect you. That's what the what ifs are, a series of events meant for your protection against the extremes. But they're just that, the extremes. Not the reality. You're not going to know either way if you don't just close your eyes and jump. Mac did. The beauty of being flawed was one of my first points regarding why this is Mac's best body of work, and the hook of 2009 directly supports that.
But I don't need to lie no more. Nowadays all I do is shine, take a breath and ease my mind, yeah. She don't cry no more. She tell me that I get her high, cause an angel's supposed to fly. I ain't asking why no more.
Songs such as Wings, Small Worlds, and Ladders support this self-forgiving theme as well. Then there is Conversation Part 1, a third-person perspective of Mac's life and status, as if he joined us on the other side of that glass box from earlier. Perhaps he's stepping into our shoes as well, but either way, he comments on the way he lived in an almost sarcastic manner. Sarcasm is a tone shared among other tracks as well, such as Self-Care and Small Worlds. Self-Care serving as a juxtaposed view of healthy self-care, and Small Worlds as the reality of his situation through a cynical lens. Swimming ends with basically a melting pot of every theme I've discussed with So It Goes. It's honestly the perfect conclusion, addressing the past, present, and future, and the nature of his life.
It's like in every conversation we the topic. It's narcissism, more like narcotics, so it goes.
Oh!
Here we have another example of Mac personifying his addiction as a woman he's seeing, which is why the narcissism narcotics line flip is so clever. Regardless if it's Mac's history with drugs or Mac's love life, that's all anyone seems to talk about. That is, darker times produce better art. That's been something I never really liked about a good majority of hip-hop fans. Earl Sweatshirt and Tyler the Creator get a lot of this same criticism. Eminem too, especially when some of his most acclaimed work, the Marshall Mathers LP and Slim Shady LP, released during his most abusive years. There's a rather old yet still very informative video by Anthony Fantano regarding drug use making the artist that I recommend you check out if you haven't. He probably tackles this topic far more intellectually than I ever could. Nevertheless, the Tabby way of addressing this goes as follows. That's a really toxic way of looking at someone's journey, both mentally and artistically, and you should really step back and evaluate how you would feel if your friends wished you were sad or high all the time because the regular you sucks. That's how it comes across when people debate on forums or Twitter or at a bar. It doesn't matter. That's selfish of you to want your quote-unquote favorite artist to go back to a darker time for your own benefit. These are not zoo animals. These are people. Just like you, just like me. Yes, I have a platform, but holy shit, am I not a responsible, balanced, optimistic, realistic, financially capable adult yet at all. Like, hilariously at all. I'm still learning even as I type the script up for this video. None of this YouTube or music shit boosts my ego or makes me feel any better than you guys. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. So please, recognize when you treat entertainers like content robots. We have lives, we have emotions, we have problems. Art allows so many the escape we all need from darker times whether you're creating it or absorbing it. Music is a beautiful vessel for that, but as you're feeling for an artist going through struggles, I urge you to exemplify the same openness towards an artist's exploration into positivity. If you don't like it, do not blame their path. I realize I'm getting a little off track here, but I feel it's something very important to bring into discussion. It just needs to stop, because it drives way too many human beings who decide to pursue art into harmful circumstances. And I don't mean to generalize, but with the growing glorification of drugs and excuses given toward destructive clout chasing, it just seems like not giving a shit about anyone or the consequences of your actions is what's cool now. Well, not to me. Now, I used that glass box example earlier not as a way to describe me enjoying the act of watching a man's life, but rather what he was providing his audience. It was Mac's choice to be as revealing as he always has been and wanted to be. It's also in So It Goes where Mac snaps to the present and dismisses the naivety of not being watched for sport. Everybody gather round, I'm still standing, sit down. Breaks the narrative fourth wall, telling his audience to get ready for the next verse, which is awkwardly delivered, almost sounding like a freestyle purely for our enjoyment.
Not lives, never die, fuck a heaven, I'm still getting high. Never mind. Did I mention I'm fine? Cause her pussy getting wetter when the weather dry.
Here, Mac tries to deliver a deeper punchline. No one gets it, so never mind. And instead opts for a braggadocious, objectifying, somewhat typical bar that the crowd can understand.
They saying I've been gone too long. I could just tell them fuck you, but that come on too strong. My God, it go on.
And this is Mac breaking the real fourth wall by talking to the listener. He wishes he could tell the general public off, but that's out of character for him, and they're a big reason for his status to be as high as it is. He gained new fans every day, which inherently brings in more toxic people that don't think of Mac as a human, rather an act. There's an opera called Pagliacci, constructed very similarly to Mac's message, a tale of a clown loved for his personal tragedies because they think it's all a performance, when in reality, it's just that, his reality. It's an interesting parallel that I would love to explore in a future video regarding mental health and performing, being a theater major myself. Finally, So It Goes ends with an equally gratifying instrumental as 2009 had as an intro. And after receiving the news of the late Mac Miller, this conclusion became the most tear-inducing moment of swimming. This closing arrangement now carries with it the sonic journey of Malcolm McCormick's spirit moving forward to the next life. Swimming. It's been really hard to sit down and make this video, like I said before, and I just didn't want to put out something regular for me. I wanted to really push myself. I got something permitted on me as well to remind me of what he's done for me and keep him in my heart at all times. This album's really important to me, and Mac as an artist is really important to me, not only just for my own art, but just how he chose to view the world. This was a really tough loss for a lot of people, and it's still so hard to believe that he's gone. But hopefully watching this video allows you to have some peace of mind about your own issues and a little bit more about Mac if you are suffering as much as I am or even more. My mental health is very real, and you can see that in my inconsistency in the upload schedules. It's something I want to talk about every week, whether it is in a video like this or on Twitch. I want to have a conversation with you guys and see where you guys are at, because I'm sure you guys are always curious to know where I am. So thank you guys for watching and waiting, and hopefully this was a good payoff. It was for me. So have a good one, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.